Business information systems. In this section, we're going to look at typical systems that we find within organizations and how it's going to assist organizations in achieving specific goals or to perform more specified actions. Now, what is a business information system? Common types of systems that we do find includes those that will allow us to do, for example, electronic and mobile commerce, to perform transaction processing, where we want to go and manage our information, as well as to reach specific decisions. So as we progress, we're going to look at some of these systems in a little more details. So typically, these systems will assist our employees to accomplish routine and special tasks. They're often integrated into one product, and in many cases they are distributed or delivered by the same company, the software package. For example, if I ask you about the Windows Office suite of applications, so Microsoft would provide a set of applications for people to assist them with their daily tasks, which could include programs like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Access, etc. So all of these are integrated into one. So what we know is that business information systems are often integrated into one product, and the information is saved in a consistent and a controlled environment, meaning that if people are used to the environment, that they would know what functionality is available and how to use information within that particular environment. Now let's continue with the next section, talking about the different types of systems and how it actually fits into the bigger picture. Now we're going to do this in the form of a pyramid. So at the bottom, we typically find the base of our pyramid to include systems that are going to be used quite a lot. Now these typically include your E&M commerce systems as well as your enterprise systems. On the next level, we're going to have more specialized systems, which would include our management information systems, as well as those systems that support or allow us to make better decisions. And then at the top of the pyramids, we have more specialized systems, which will allow us to manage the knowledge within our company, as well as various other specialized information systems. Now let's see who are going to use the systems on each of the different levels. Now if we look at the bottom layer, we will see that typically the types of decisions that will take place here will be your operational decisions. And these decisions are taken by your day-to-day managers. It's going to be your day-to-day decisions taken by your day-to-day managers, especially also your line managers. So these are the people at the bottom of the pyramid that will handle most of the basic ordinary decisions in your company. If we look at the next layer, the middle layer, we will find that it's typically your more tactical decisions, which would include midterm decisions that are made by your middle managers, your supervisors. The next layer is where we find our strategic decisions that will take place, and these are typically your longer term decisions made by senior management. So if you look at this image, you will see that the bottom of the pyramid, that's where most of our data will be used. That data will be turned into information and eventually become part of knowledge. And typically we would find at the top of the pyramid, these individuals are more concerned with the knowledge that they have in place in order to make future predictions, etc. So again, we can use data and eventually turn it into information, turn it into knowledge, and these reflect right through to the system. Now, if we look at some of the systems that's available, and we're just going to touch on a few of these in the next few slides. We have electronic and mobile commerce sites, typically referred to as your e-business systems. We have enterprise systems. Now these allow you to do transaction processing, selling products, exchanging services, exchanging information between companies. Enterprise resource planning, which would typically include keeping a track of your customers, keeping a list of all your employees, the wages that they're supposed to get, all those kind of aspects. We would find information and decision support systems, helping us to make better decisions. Managing the information in all of our systems, so management information systems, knowledge management systems, artificial intelligence, which is one that we're starting to hear more and more about, where we at this stage have given computing devices the ability to start to learn and to make its own decisions. We have robotic systems where we've got various types of robots simulating real world tasks, activities, and then trying to do those activities where it might perhaps not be possible for human beings to go and do. We're going to, at the last section, look at vision systems, systems that have the ability to recognize patterns and products. Natural language systems, which we nowadays find on our cell phones, where you can speak to your phone, it recognizes the commands and what you tell it, and then it can go and actually perform those actions. Learning systems, where the system have the ability to start learn. Interacting with other systems. We're going to look at neural networks, expert systems, as well as virtual reality and multimedia. Now, just for interest's sake, virtual reality, we're also starting to see more and more examples of this, where you can allow people to go into a whole new virtual world, something that doesn't exist, or we can actually go and place information on top of our existing world. So some really nice systems that will come into effect. So let's look at some of these in a little more detail. If we talk about e-commerce, it generally refers to all the business transactions that we want to do in electronic format. Now there's various subcategories, and you might have heard about some of these. B2B, business to business, business to consumer, consumer to consumer, and then various government related interactions. So this comes down to the type of interaction that will take place. So if you buy products from an online store, that's going to be business to consumer. If you try to sell a product to another individual, you're perhaps going to use something like OLX and Gumtree, and those would be considered to be consumer to consumer e-commerce. If we look at the next one, mobile commerce, same principle, but instead of having a computer and a website, we're now going to use our mobile devices in order to conduct business. So any wireless device where you don't need a physical connection would be considered mobile commerce. If we look at the last one, electronic business, e-business, which allows companies to now go and use information systems to perform all their business related tasks. For example, people nowadays go, and if they want to hire new staff, they would go to websites that, let's say, something like LinkedIn, where they can see the CVs of possible people, or they can contact agents in order to do it for them. So the whole process has been taken into electronic format. Now, in the past, if we had the following situation where people try to buy products through the company, it was a very cumbersome process. So you had to prepare your requisition, you had to take it to various people for permission. That was then sent to a purchasing department, they would have mailed it to a vendor, and then the whole process would have continued. Nowadays, with e-business, electronic business and e-commerce, we find that people can now typically go and by themselves directly communicate with a vendor if they're given permission, and then they can conduct that transaction with a lot less hassle. Now, if we continue and look at enterprise systems, we typically find that we need to know about the following concepts. First of all, you need to know what a transaction is. Now, a transaction can be categorized as any activity that a business would like to conduct. For example, they want to do the payments, they want to determine the sales information. You buy products from a store, and when you get to the point of sale terminal, they scan the product and that is deducted from the inventory list, etc. So all of that would relate to transactions. Then we typically find transaction processing systems. Now these systems are set up in such a manner that it would go and record all our business transactions and business interactions. So anything that happens within the business would be recorded here. So if you think about the pyramid that we've shown before, typically right at the bottom we would find our TPS system. If we look at ERP systems, now these programs would help you with managing your organization's vital operations. For example, if you look at the image at the bottom, working with human resource management, working with customer relationship management, working with global interaction with other companies, your communication type systems, all those kind of things. If we look at the next set of systems, MIS, your management information systems, these systems, and just for interest's sake, as we continue talking about these systems, you would notice that they start off by giving you the basic definition for a computer-based information system, the components, and then they would give you a specific task for that system. So all the components that we discussed in a previous section will be used in order to achieve a particular goal. So for a MIS system, the idea is that it's going to provide routine information to our managers as well as our decision makers. And this will allow them to ensure that our company are run in a functional, efficient manner. And it will also provide them with standard reports which would allow them to interpret that data and information in order to get to better decision making, which leads into our next system, decision support systems. Now, a decision support system is placed there to assist people in solving problematic areas. The aim here is to allow them to make more effective conclusions, so to get to better decisions, and typically we would find various components within these type of systems. For example, a model base, a database, a user interface and dialogue manager. So at a later stage we will look at these aspects. For example, if we look at the model base, that would be rules that will guide you in order to get to certain decisions. The database would be your facts that you're going to record. The user interface or dialogue manager would be the connection between the individual and this particular system, asking them for information and then making decisions and then informing them of such decisions. The next type of system that we find is our knowledge management systems. Now these are systems that allow us to go and store and retrieve knowledge. For example, if you have an expert in your company, it's a good idea that you actually go and record all the knowledge that that person has, for in case they leave the company, leaving with that knowledge. So let's say we have the following scenario. If you want to know about, let's say for argument, bird species, in order to obtain that knowledge, you're going to look at books. So that knowledge was recorded in a book. So you would see a particular bird, you would try to locate it within the book, and that will give you more information on that particular species. So it was saved there and it allows you to go and retrieve that information. KMS systems also allows better collaboration. It will link you up to experts, their knowledge. It will allow you to capture and use your own knowledge. And it will also go and enhance the whole knowledge management process. So what do we do if we have new knowledge? How do we save it? What kind of assumptions can we make out of this knowledge? Now for the last section, we're just going to touch on some of those other systems, the lesser known systems. For example, if we talk about artificial intelligence, which allows us to give a computer the ability or the characteristics of human intelligence. So typically, these types of computers are created in such a manner that they can do some of the functions that we as human beings can go and function. Recognizing objects, interacting with other systems or with human beings. If we look at some of the examples, we typically find it in games, where the game can try to detect and learn about your patterns and then adjust the difficulty level based on that. Making medical diagnosis. So if you don't have all the facts available, the system can go and they can, through simulations and predictions, come up with certain answers. If we look at robotics, initially robots were created to take over tasks that were deemed to be complex, dangerous, very routine and boring. But nowadays we find that robots are built into other systems where they can actually go and do surveillance. There's talks about hover robots, drones, where they can be used for delivery purposes perhaps in the future, where we find them where they need to detonate bombs and those kind of things. So generally speaking, there's a lot of uses, but ultimately it's going to take a lot of jobs away. Then we have vision systems. Vision systems will have the ability to go to see images or to see objects, recognize objects, and then to make decisions based upon what they see. Natural language systems, which has the ability to recognize what we tell them as well as what we write down, so they will recognize all those different patterns and again perform certain commands. We have learning systems where the system can actually go and learn from its own experiences. For example, if you have a robot and every time when you walk past it you push it over, that system can learn, so whenever it sees you coming it can learn, or it can start to avoid you. That would be a learning system. Neural networks, which allows computers to recognize and act on patterns or trends. For example, as soon as your system realizes that you're running out of stock, it can automatically go and put in a new order to ensure that the stock are delivered in time. We also get expert systems, which allows you to function like an expert in a particular field. For example, we find this mostly on websites where people go to sites such as WebMD, where you add your ailments and the system will interpret that and come back to what they see as a problem or a possible ailment. What we also see nowadays is aspects such as virtual reality and multimedia, which allows you to go and interact with a simulated environment, so you're totally placed in that new environment, or where it can actually go through augmented reality, place content on top of your own environment. In the next section we're going to talk about systems development.